We've got Pratik Jain and Najib Shah joining us as well on this discussion this morning. Pratik, let me start off with you then. That seems to be a lot on the agenda and yet didn't find those slabs, the discussion on the slabs as part of the agenda for today. What would you like to see come out of the meeting?
Yes, I think it's music to my ears that GST Council is not going to discuss the rates or the slabs. And I've been saying this for a while that given the economic conditions as of now, and also the fact there's so many changes happening in GST, the new return framework is coming, e-invoicing is going to happen, the multiple returns that businesses are going to file, e-way bill system is there already. I think there's enough and more in the plate of the government, as well as for the industry to sort of tackle right now. So this was not the right time to look at the rates, etc. But I'm also encouraged by a couple of things that was mentioned by your colleague. One is integrated refund mechanism, and that will help. And particularly with the state authorities, we were finding it challenging, because they were raising some issues which were not raised in the past, because perhaps there is a lack of experience when dealing with services there, and most of the refunds are for export of services. I also heard about some kind of public grievance body which will come in, and that will help the industry, because now for every small technical procedural issue the industry has to go to High Court. That's not the way to implement GST. I think that's good. That's going to happen. I also think that GST Council is going to discuss some slightly long-term kind of view on GST rates, and I think that debate needs to start as to what kind of GST and what kind of GST slabs that we would want after 3 years or 5 years from now. How will we expand the tax base by including real estate and other things which are outside GST right now under GST. So I think this is a very, very important important meeting. It's good that the council is moving away from the rates of tax, which I don't think was the right thing to do in any case.
Najib, what would you be expecting? Do you believe that the discussions on rate changes or slab changes should start?
As I mentioned earlier too, we need to put things in perspective, simply because the centre has now released cess to the states for the months of July and August. We still have got cess for the months of September, October due, and for the remaining few months. It's obvious that there is not enough funds in the cess kitty. Secondly, revenues across both centre and states have not been doing too well. So in the absence of revenues picking up, the burden on the centre has increased. That's why the cess was there in the first place, which is why we need to look at how is the centre going to look at compensating the states. Now, these are issues which need to be tackled. One was suggesting an increase in rates only because an increase in rates will reduce the burden of cess on the centre, because the revenues would increase for both the centre and the states. Having said that, there never is a good time for increasing rates, and the other issues on the agenda today are indeed necessary. We need to go urgently towards e-matching, invoice matching, which has not happened and which is the reason why there's such large-scale evasion in the country. So technology needs to be tightened up there, and 1st April is really some date I am looking forward to, where the simplification regime will kick in, and hopefully the matching of invoices will take place, and that will reduce evasion. Refund giving by a single authority is something which the centre has always been mooting but never could get past the states in the days leading to the discussions of the GST laws. So that is something which is much delayed, but then better late than never. That should also ease considerable pain points, like Pratik did point out about the refund not being given in due time by the states.
Exactly. Pratik, taking off from that, revenue collections, that's really been the sore point. What else do you feel, whether it's discussed today or could be discussed, and solutions that could be come up with in near future to aid those revenue collections?
I think what is there in the agenda is today is largely administrative measures to increase the revenue collection. We discussed about e-invoicing. There will be a status update on e-way bills, etc. One of the other thing which I have heard is that they would perhaps want to get a power or give the power to the authorities to block the input credits if they find that input credits have not been taken properly. And I think this is something which one will have to be very careful with. And as Mr. Shah pointed out, that hopefully from April, when the invoice matching starts or just thereafter, and the e-invoicings also start, government will have a greater control over fraudulent credit. So why would you want to give an officer a power to block the input credit for the industry if he feels that there is it's improper? Because then it becomes a tool in the hands of the authorities and at times can be used in a manner that we don't want it to be used. So I think today it will be largely on administrative measures, how do we expand the tax base. But I think, as I pointed out, time has come now to come up with a white paper on GST and say what kind of GST India wants over the next few years. How do we sort of simplify the laws? How do we simplify the compliances? How do we include the other sector which have not been included? How do we look at those policy issues which have crept in? For example, you have restricted the input credit for restaurant and real estate. It's not a good idea under any classical GST system to block the input credit for any sector, because then you're incentivizing sort of cash transactions in that sector. So some of those things which have happened, and perhaps there was realities, political, economic, social realities on the ground, but try and sort of move away from that and look at the ideal GST structure which India wants to have in the next few years.
Okay, in terms of sectors, Najib, and including the new sectors and this whole conversation around input credit, what's your view as well?
Sectors are well known: real estate, petroleum products, both of which are outside the ambit and really need to be brought in because that will ensure the smooth flow of credit right through, which now is getting distorted. And technology, I mean, one has been telling this for so many times now. Technology has to be the answer for curbing evasion and getting more people in the net. Blockage of credit in any VAT GST scheme is not a great idea at all, and we have done that only to offset the reduction in rates. So that is not a great idea. All that should be cleaned up, and if that means increasing a rate here and there, it has to be done.
Just wanted to get a sense of, since the time it has been implemented, always, things have been changed. People have tried to go on ahead and increase the GST collections. Do you think we are into this final leg, and whenever the changes happen, you may see a smoothing of collection?
I don't know. You see, the fixation of targets for the next 4 months is not a great idea. Because it'll put that much more pressure on the officers, and invariably what happens when targets are kept, you will have situations like Pratik did point out of credit being denied, and to force the people to pay tax through the cash route. So I think it's going to be a huge challenge for the next few months. Revenue is required. That will only reduce the burden of the compensation cess. But if you put targets on the officers, distortions are bound to creep in. Enforcement action is bound to increase. Some excesses here and there can possibly happen. But hopefully that will also improve compliance, because that really is a challenge, really, that too many people believe that they can get away with not paying the taxes. Hence, the total revenues of the GST has not been up to mark.
Right, Najib. Thanks so much for taking out time for us. Pratik, thanks so much, and hope to touch base with both of you all once we have the details of the GST Council meet and what essentially comes out in the afternoon meeting, which is scheduled.